Hello, Chain Gang. Welcome back to the 4 Chains and Top 5 Friday. This is the show where every episode we do a top 5 list and we take it from the suggestions that our subscribers make in the comments on YouTube. So if you have a top 5 list that you want to do and we feel it's in our capability, just put it in the comments there, and if we do your idea, we will give you a shout out. Like today, our shout out goes to Chris Huggins. Today's list is top 5 habits that all great general managers of restaurants, but probably all general managers share. Chris is currently interviewing, as we're taping this, to be a manager with a Domino's franchise MOE, which I'm very familiar with in the Dallas area. And hopefully when he watches this, he'll be a general manager. But if you aren't, Chris, listen, you're gonna be a great general manager. And I know this because, like, all you really have to do is care. Care, because if you care, you're gonna learn the things that I'm talking about today, as long as it's available to you. And, you know, hopefully people would consider our videos available to you. So, you know, I understand the videos we make are not TikTok length, but if you're willing to invest that time in wanting to be a general manager, to watch this video and some of the other ones we've done, I'm just telling you, you're just way ahead of the game. So let's get right into the list of top 5 traits all general managers share if they're great. And number 5 is follow your own rules. If you want to be the boss, I just feel like that's misguided. Because if you have a sense of superiority that now that you're the GM, you don't have to follow the rules that you used to have to follow, maybe that makes you feel a little bit good about yourself, but honestly, it's a really empty feeling compared with all of the fulfilling things that you can have for yourself being a general manager of a restaurant and all of the positions above that. I think that young people who become general managers, and I'm not casting aspersions on young people because, you know, I'm sure to a certain degree I was a victim of this. You're glad you're a general manager because now you're making more money, you're the person in charge, you get to be the boss, and I'm just telling you that if you are a great general manager, you will experience the greatest aspect of that, which is that you have the opportunity to make a difference in people's lives. I know it's obnoxious for people who have money to talk about, oh, money isn't important. I'm not saying money is not important. It is. I'm saying it's not the most important thing. Just a couple of days ago from filming this, a person who I hired as a driver, and then I hired him as assistant manager, and then when I became a supervisor, I hired him as a manager, and then he eventually wound up replacing me as supervisor when I went and left the company. He did a Facebook post on the anniversary of him winning National Manager of the Year, and I'll put the post up here. And let me just say this, like, I did focus on bonus checks because our bonus checks were a percentage of the profits and it was a way of keeping score, and I'm a very competitive person. But I couldn't tell you the amount of any bonus check that I ever got. I can't tell you the amount of any of my yearly incomes, but I'm never going to forget the message that David Grizzard sent me about him winning National Manager of the Year. Those are the kinds of things that you really treasure, and I want you to have that kind of moment that I have. And to get those moments, to have that kind of influence on people's lives, you need to be a certain kind of general manager. And I guess the 5 steps that I'm talking about would hopefully help you with that. And if you are the kind of general manager that does not obey their own rules, then you won't have that pleasure. If you are requiring if you have uniform standards, if you're requiring your employees to wear a hat, you should wear a hat. You know, at a certain point on Domino's, the above store personnel were not required to wear a hat when they're in the store. I never took that advantage because I don't approve of it. I'm not trying to pretend that I'm morally superior to them in any way. We are a team, and that is how you get successful. I'll just name some of the rules that we had. I'm sure you can think of different ones for yours, maybe put them in the comments. A lot of Domino's have a rule that the first 4 or 5 spots right in front of the store, that employees shouldn't park there because that's better for the customers. If that's the case, you should not park there. But I've seen many supervisors enforce that rule on others and then park there themselves. You're not going to get the kind of respect and loyalty that you can. You know, if you run a Domino's that's not in a high security area, you probably have a rule that they're required to wear car top signs. If you have that rule and then you are making a delivery, you should have a car top sign on. You get the idea. You can just fill in the blank. And I would just say that your feeling of superiority because you don't have to follow the rules is an empty feeling compared to feeling good about yourself as a manager and as a leader of your team. Number 4, and this is definitely one that Chris Huggins wanted to know about, which is interviews. General managers are great at interviews, despite the fact that they should be great at interviews, but that is the skill that is usually most commonly lacking. And I think the reason is that people who are training those general managers don't put a lot of time into that because they're focusing on the operation of the stores. And it's understandable, but think about it. When you're a general manager, yeah, you are the one that should be doing the interviews, but if you have an upper level assistant manager or manager in training or whatever you have them sit in, train them to do those things because it's an important skill. If you are above store, you should be a supervisor or a franchisee or whatever it is, you should be teaching classes on how to interview. And the reason is because running a restaurant is not tennis, it's not boxing, it's not an individual sport, it's a team sport. And you can play in a team sport and not be good at that aspect. Michael Jordan was the most talented player in basketball long before he was the best player in basketball. He's racking up the best statistics while Magic and Bird and Isaiah or whatever are walking home with the trophy. He learned that lesson, and that's how he has 6 rings. The best case scenario is that you get promoted to general manager because the previous general manager got promoted themselves. But that's usually not the case. And so you're going to want your own team. Even if it was a great general manager, you're still going to want your own team. And the way to start building that team is being good at interviews. I want to talk about three skills, 3 things to keep in mind when you're doing interviews. Number 1, you want to be able to hire candidates who show up and appear to be great additions to your team or great employees. These are the goals of being great at interview, why it's important to being great at interview. This means on your part, you need to be available when the interview time is scheduled. If you have an interview scheduled at 2 o'clock between the lunch and dinner rush, somebody else should be running the store while you're having those interviews. Line them up like that. You should be looking them in the eye. Show them that respect. As a general rule, maybe I should have said this first, you want to present yourself as the kind of boss that you would want to have if you were interviewing for a job. And the other thing that I think interviewers rarely keep in mind, and in fact, I just had an interview where they did not do a good job at this, which is that, yeah, you're interviewing them and that's very important, but keep in mind, they're interviewing you too. As we talked about in our building and retaining the winning team, if somebody wants to deliver pizzas, they're not going on Indeed and only applying for Domino's. They're applying for pizza, they're applying for Papa John's, they're applying to mom and pops, anybody that's up there. So they, in all likelihood, if they're a good candidate, are gonna have a choice as to which employer to go to. You want to be that choice. Number 2, and this is the most overlooked one, you want to be able to identify the candidates that are detrimental to your team. And the reason why this is underutilized is a lot of people are desperate for warm bodies. They need staff really, really badly. And what I would say to you is, what you need is great staff. The surest way to lose a great employee is to tolerate a bad employee. And you can avoid that by not hiring bad employees. Now, sometimes you inherit bad employees. I get it. I had a year where when I got promoted to a store in Falls Church, the first 2 months, I was the worst in the company at turnover. I had the highest turnover in the entire company for 2 straight months. But, a lot of managers don't want to do that because it means they have to work extra hours. It did mean I had to work extra hours. It meant I had to work 80 hours a week for a while. But then I had 12 consecutive months where I had the lowest turnover. Playing long ball. As a general manager, if I expanded this list to the top 20 things, it would be, a lot of them would be focused on making a short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain. Great managers play long ball. They're willing to make short-term sacrifices to be able to have long-term success. And, when you have an employee that shows up for an interview, you want to hire them. You want to believe that they're a good candidate, but trust your instincts. I personally have a rule: if they show up 1 minute late, I don't even interview them. And the reason is because when somebody's interviewing, it's like you going on a first date. You're putting your best foot forward, and there's no better version of you than there is in the interview. So if they show up a little bit late to an interview, they're going to be a punctuality problem. They're going to be a discipline problem. If they show up looking disheveled, not clean grooming, their outfit is a mess, that's going to be a problem for you. If they aren't energetic in the interview, how are they going to be energetic in the store? If they're not looking you in the eye in the interview, do you really think that's going to be a good employee? Be willing to not hire great employees. And here's a big reason why. People don't pay attention to the cost of hiring people. So if you hire somebody, that's going to cost you money in terms of paperwork, in terms of training, in terms of their skill level arc. And that brings me to rule number 3, which is that you want, as a general manager, to be good in interviews. You want to set expectations from the jump. There's the temptation to make the job sound more appealing than it is, or hide certain requirements of the job or expectations of the job, just so you can get them in the door. Does that sound familiar? The problem with that is that there's so many bad things that happen for that. Number one, most of those employees, you're going to spend a lot of time hiring and training them, and they're going to leave when they found out the job is not as advertised. But also it's bad for morale when you've got somebody that thinks they're taking one job and it turns out to be another. That's not going to be a positive vibe in the store that's really going to be helping you. And I just think that it's a big pay the cost to be the boss situation. It also makes things easier if you're telling them, when you have their attention, when they're trying to get the interview, hey, it's very important you show up on time every day. Here's why that's uniquely true in my job. It's important that you follow the uniform standards, and explain to them why. All of the things that are important to you, like cross-training, et cetera, have a list and explain those things to every single team member. Okay, let's go to the number 3 reason. Number 3 habit that all general managers have is that they recognize that they are the bar. Your team is not going to perform at a level higher than you. I have never, ever seen a restaurant where the general manager comes in late sometimes, but the employees are always on time. It's not a thing. You set the bar. I tell this to new general managers all of the time. If you are a truly great leader, you should know this. No crew is going to be better at punctuality than the manager. No crew is going to be better at following policies and procedures than the manager. No crew is going to follow your safety precautions better than the manager. No crew is going to have more enthusiasm or a better attitude than the manager. You are the bar. A fish stinks from the head down, and as general manager, you are the head of that fish. I would say that a team shines when the leader is a bright sun. So be a bright sun, not a smelly fish. This is one of those situations where I wish I would have thought this through and come up with a better analogy. So let's just move on. Number 2, and this is the one that the least amount of people follow or believe in. And I think part of the reason is people are generally cynical and suspicious, and you don't really truly believe this till you've seen it in action. But number 2 is train your replacement. Bad general managers don't want to train their replacement because they're afraid they're going to get replaced. Here's the truth. No matter what you are, a manager, a supervisor, whatever, people who train their replacement don't get fired, they get promoted. If you don't have the skill set or the willingness to train your replacement, you don't really deserve to get promoted. And by the way, if it's a willingness thing and you're not doing it because you don't want somebody to take your job, you're gonna lose your job anyways. You're gonna be replaced by somebody else, just maybe not the person that you didn't train or should have trained. But the other thing is, you get a huge benefit while you're doing that because you get way more performance and loyalty for your crew. You train your assistant manager to replace you so you can be a supervisor or whatever the next step is. You train the shift leader to replace the assistant manager. You take the lead, but the assistant manager also does the training. That's part of the training. Get them in the mode of that. And then the shift leader is training a customer service representative to become a shift leader. And so everybody sees that there's an atmosphere of trying to make people great, trying to make people better. Now let's go to number 1. And this is number 1, I mean by a lot, at least for me and my style. And that is, involve your team in your success. When I was a supervisor and I would go into a store and the manager wasn't there, I would always say to a driver, a CSR, assistant manager, just any other employee, if that store had just won store of the period or store of the month or store of the quarter or however you do it, I would say, hey, congratulations. And if they didn't know what I was talking about, that would be a problem. My crew always knew when the team meetings were and when people store the period was being announced. They always knew where we were in comparison to the competition. They wanted the store to win. And when my supervisor would come in and say congratulations, and this is where I learned that, everybody else would bust into applause and want high fives and hugs and stuff like that. It is the best way to do it. When I won Manager of the Year, I'll just say it right now, I wasn't one of the 5 best managers in my company. I won because my team won. I held team meetings every single month for the first, I did it for 12 months in a row, including the first 10 months of the year that I won. And I was asking for their input and valuing their input. Doesn't necessarily mean I took everybody's suggestion, but I took everybody's suggestion with respect. And then I involved them in the implementation of those ideas. And everybody just felt like they had a share in it. Now, I guess what I would say is I took a bunch of people who got a job that they meant to be a part-time thing, and I transformed them into this super team who, was focused on being the best Domino's pizza in the country. And I guess I'll point out the criticism here. I think I talked about one other video how somebody was making a joke. They thought that I was the worst person who ever won Manager of the Year. And their argument was that I just luck boxed into a great crew. 6 of my drivers wound up becoming general manager. One of them, the aforementioned David Grizzard, became national manager of the year. I certainly don't think that I was the best manager that Domino's ever had. In fact, when I became supervisor and director of operations, I feel like I had managers that wound up being better than me. But if I was forced into a position of arguing I'm the best, I would use the exact same argument for them saying I'm the weakest or the luckiest or whatever they say. Because I created that atmosphere. They not only, all the part-time people, every person on my crew was focused on winning that year, but a lot of them then decided they like this so much they're going to make it a career. I could not have won it without those people because I wasn't the best manager. I was too inexperienced. I just wasn't. And, you know, when I was walking down that aisle, as I'd seen others do when I was an assistant manager, and you know, it's a great experience. You walk down the aisle, and as you're walking down the aisle, the people are standing up and you get a plaque. I think the important thing is I realized that my team put that plaque in my hands. And you know, we at Domino's, we like sleeves a lot more than, shout out to Team Washington that started this, more than plaques. But I am aware that, you know, with the exception of the drivers of the year, like everything on my sleeve, all of those awards were put in my hand by a great team. And I probably wasn't the most skilled person to win any of those awards. I just had the best team. And I think that's what really kind of being a general manager is all about. So I'd like to thank David. I'd like to thank everybody. There's just too many to name, all of the people that put me in this position to be able to make these videos and gave me, you know, that level of success. And you know, a lot of them are incredibly successful, even more successful than me in several cases on their own. And that really, really makes me proud. So, you know, if you want to see, that's the end of this list, but if you want to see other lists, just put it in the comments, like and subscribe, and we really appreciate all of the feedback, and that's why we do the ones that you request. So we will see you next Friday on The 4 Chains.